All right. Welcome, everyone. This is the Wealth Building Educator with another episode, and I'm super duper excited to have a phenomenal individual with me today. I have Mr. Rahkim Sabree. He's an author, a public speaker, entrepreneur. I mean, there's so many things that he's responsible for, and I'm just elated to have him on my platform. He has, been well known for his viral resignation from his job. He's been featured on the Tamron Hall Show, and I'm just excited to have him on my platform today. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rahkim Sabree. How's it going, my brother?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Hey, man, I know you could be doing 1,000 other things. Just the fact that you set aside some time to speak with me, man, I really appreciate it. So, why don't you tell anyone who does not know who you are a little bit about yourself? Growing up in Mount Vernon, New York, and I know you were if I'm not mistaken, the oldest of 3 children. Why don't you just speak
to 3 at the time? Yeah.
Yeah, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So yeah, I grew up in Mount Vernon, New York. I'm the oldest of now 5, and at the time, the oldest of 3. I experienced aspects of poverty growing up. Probably around my teenage years is when I really realized what the household financial situation looked like. My parents had separated, and I like to talk about those aspects of my experience because they shaped what were my on money and what were my goals. Today, I focus on financial empowerment and financial trauma. And so a big part of that is helping people also identify the areas of their life where money was either talked about or not talked about, but how those experiences shaped their views on money today. And then what are the patterns of behavior that they exhibit in the management or mismanagement of their money.
Awesome. So, growing up in poverty, what do you recall to be like your first memories of dealing with money?
Food stamps. That I laugh, but it was an aspect of the financial, if you will, that I was intimately involved in and aware of because I often carried the electronic food stamps card. I helped to budget what was the monthly allotment and was well aware of the rules and regulations that come with, what you can buy, cold food versus hot food, and, making sure that wasting it on like junk food or anything like that. So that was, I think, like my first, crash course with budgeting, but just kind of thinking about some other pivotal experiences by osmosis, since seeing my mom go to check cashing instead of a bank so that she can pay bills or cash checks, walking over cash and money orders to management of the building that we lived in. What else? We did not discuss credit because I don't think that there was credit in the picture at that particular point in time. So I didn't know anything about credit cards. I think at that particular point in time, my parents had checks during the time I was growing up. So I knew what checks were. I knew that they had some kind of financial connotation, but certainly didn't understand like how to write a check and, that checks were not this invisible access to unlimited funds, but they were tied into a bank account that had balances and what have you. So all of those experiences, Section 8, I'll also add as a supplement to what our housing was. So I grew up in an apartment building, and seeing mediums or means for survival that my mom leveraged shaped what I believe was possible for me. I thought when I got into my mid-20s, early 30s, that I would have Section 8 and food stamps. And it didn't occur to me that I could own property, to aspire to own property, to aspire to own a house, and to collect rent from other people until an environmental change. So I left New York with my mom in the fall of 2010. Mm-hmm. And then moved up to the Hartford area of Connecticut. I started working in banking shortly after that, October of 2011. And it was just like my eyes were open to like these infinite possibilities.
Absolutely.
Who manage their money or mismanage their money, having conversations with colleagues and peers who owned property, who had credit cards, who were investing in their like retirement through 401ks, what have you. And I was just like, wait a second, like, what's this? I could do this too. So there was a mindset shift that correlated with an environmental shift. And, that was on more physical level, right? That was on a social level. That was on a, mental level. Like, is it something that I believe I can have, that I deserve? And certainly the execution piece and saying, hey, I'm 21 years old. I want to be a homeowner by the time I'm 25. What do I have to do to get there?
Wow, interesting, man. Great story. So we have some similar background information. I'm from Hartford, Connecticut. So
Nice.
yeah, I moved to New Jersey when I was around 7 years old. And, when you mentioned check cashing places, I do know that my parents spent a lot of time in check cashing places. And we all know that's not the best use of your money, because you pay quite a bit of money, quite a bit of fees to cash a check rather than, have a bank account. So we did have those experiences. And one story I like to tell is how, we spent a lot of time in pawn shops. And one thing about us was we knew when we took something to the pawn shop, it wasn't coming back. Because if you have to borrow $300 to put something in a pawn shop, there's no way you're going to have $400 to get it back out. So we
Right.
knew we were saying goodbye to anything that we took to the pawn shop. And one of those things was the first Nintendo that we ever had, which we saved up a whole year to get that. And then we just to watch it go bye-bye, man, that was devastating. And those are the things that drive me to this day. And I'm pretty sure those life experiences have driven you as well, to leading up to, your viral resignation. So tell us a little bit about the banking industry and why you got to the point where you were so mentally stressed out in your job that you had to just, walk away without even giving notice.
Yeah. In hindsight, it's easier to kind of see what that pathing looked like. Banking was never an aspiration of mine. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to work in banking. And I think, the general kind of consensus with people that work in banking is that that's the case, right? Banking happens kind of by accident. But at the time, it was an industry and a role that was paying, excuse me, that was paying more than what I had been doing previously. So previous to banking, I was in the supermarkets. I was getting like minimum wage. They were union jobs, but because of that, like the pay increases were very regulated. It's like, cents that I was getting. And I just didn't like it. I didn't like the supermarket. So I think the last hourly rate that I got in the supermarket was maybe $7.50, which sounds crazy now because minimum wage is like double that.
Yeah.
But the first salary offer or hourly rate that I was offered in banking was like $11.35, so significantly more. And one like into, I guess, the suited corporate world, and I started tasting promotions and raises and bonuses, and I had benefits and all the things that I think a lot of people aspire to have. It became like a chase for me. And so from 2011 to 2021, like that 10-year stint was just me chasing the promotion raise. So I spent 6 years customer facing, which I enjoyed a lot of. I held pretty much every position branch side. And then I spent 4 years non-customer facing in a support role that was really kind of like project management, specific to areas that impacted contact center operations. And I was really good at the politics game, really good at like networking and professional branding, making people know who I was, making people know what I was about, and building those relationships that would help career advancement for me. And then I ended up with a leader in 2020, the beginning of 2020, that I already knew I didn't like and didn't like me. And she made it very clear. She didn't like me. She made it very clear that there was, aspects to our interactions where there was sabotage taking place or attempted sabotage. I felt very pressured to always be on. like to always be on point. A peer of mine actually remarked to me that that was a comment that she made about me. So Rakim's always on point. And so it's one thing to hear that in the vein of, I think, like a compliment. It's
Mhm.
like, yeah, like I'm always on point. But knowing the interaction that we had previously, I knew that that was a statement that was being made, is to say like she's tested me to see, am
Mm.
I? And so, there's microaggressions that exist in the corporate space. Yeah, I'll be very woman. And so, there's aspects of, I think, white supremacy that they don't even realize exists in the corporate space. And so, as we were having conversations around diversity, equity, inclusion as an organization, and certainly after the murder of George Floyd, much more intentional conversations, how blind most of my coworkers and peers were to the role of white supremacy and racism in those corporate spaces. It was unfathomable to them that I could be high performing at 30 years old, working full time, and write a book and do a TED talk and write for these. And so my work was scrutinized, I think, on a level that maybe others wasn't, because it was like, well, how are you able to do all those things? We need to give you more. And
Mm.
so, as I was encouraged initially to share the extracurriculars, if you will, the things that I was doing outside of work and wildly successful at, I was also penalized. I was penalized by way of denials for promotions. I wasn't penalized by way of raises, to my knowledge. But it was just like I was stuck on this hamster wheel. There was no path for career progression. Um, in the beginning of 2021, there was massive layoffs that had occurred. So there was what my future looked like in the role that I held. I was questioned about what it is that I do all day. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, you pay me. Like, wait, why am I telling you that?
Mhm.
And so I felt like I had to justify my existence in the space. And two things can't occupy the same space at the same time, right? So whereas I'm experiencing massive success on the merit of my own side of corporate spaces, between the talks and the conferences and the publications and different things that I'm doing, I'm feeling like pressured and minimized and not celebrated or appreciated in the workplace. And so I'm just like, what do I do? Fall in line, or do I embrace my greatness outside of the work? And one of the last conversations that I had, manager, was she said to me straight up, she says, Rahkim, you don't have any skills. Yeah,
What?
she said, you don't have any skills. So it's hard for us to place you in, a role. And I was like, whoa, let's correct that. I have a lot of skills. I don't have skills that fit the role that you want to put me in. And so, of course, she had to backpedal. And she's like, well, that's not what I'm, the whole like trying to clean it up.
Mhm.
But what was said was what she meant, at
Mhm.
least as far as I'm concerned. I didn't have any skills in her eyes. And I'm like, really? Like, you think about all of this that I've accomplished and you can't find a way to leverage that skill set and those experiences in a way that's beneficial for this company? Cool. And, the corporate hierarchy has like these gatekeepers that says, yeah, you might be ready to move on, or you might feel ready to move on, or you might have a skill set or experience set that might have you better fit for a different role. But until I say so, I tell you to do. And I didn't like somebody else having that power over me. So when I did resign, I resigned effective immediately. I had been thinking about it for about 2 weeks. I had consulted with my support system. I had done a lot of soul searching internally. And I wrote the letter probably a month in advance and had it in my drafts. Yeah, and I just filled in the appropriate dates. And then after I quit, I tweeted it,
Yeah.
and it went viral.
That just blew up.
It blew up immediately. Like, it was around 9:30 in the morning. There was, it ended up with like 2.2 million impressions. I wrote several articles about it, 2 articles for Business Insider, one for Entrepreneur, one for The Grio. And a lot of those articles went viral. And that's how Tamron Hall found me. Somebody wanted to produce an article. And it's just like, it was a story that was not only reflective of like great courage, right? In the midst of a pandemic, you're leaving this job, this cushy job that's paying you well, but you're leaving on top, right? You're leaving, like I had just got a raise. I had just got a bonus.
Mhm.
So I was high performing. There's no way to tell the story in a way it's not. And it's a story that so many people can resonate with.
Absolutely.
So, I've heard both sides of it. I've had people send me like hate mail after reading my article, like, that was irresponsible. You left your team hanging. You should never burn that bridge, so on and so forth. But I've had far more people congratulate me and support me because they're like, do what you did. And so the blessing for me in all of this is being a blessing to other people, inspiring, like, what does embracing courage and faith look like, helping people see that there is another way, that they don't have to be another cog in the machine, and to push back. If that means pursuing entrepreneurship in the way that I did, cool. It's taking a career pivot into something that's more fulfilling, that makes you happy, that pays you more or maybe pays you less, but your mental and physical health is intact, then you do that thing. And so my grandfather used to say he's a chain breaker. That's how he described himself. And so I guess I get it honestly, like help people to like open their eyes to the realities of the world.
Absolutely, man. That's an amazing story. And I don't know if I'm pretty sure you've heard and paid attention to it, but since your story has come out on Tamron Hall, I have seen quite a bit of posts, like people, they will retweet screenshots of text message conversations they've had with their boss where they're like, I quit. If anything, you have empowered people and you are allowing bosses to step their game up, right? So, which I'm the kind of boss where I try to treat people better than I want to be treated. I want to make it a comfortable environment where people want to come work for me. I want them to be able to run through the wall for me, man. And I know they're not always going to necessarily feel like that, especially in education. We have difficult days, but I want them to at least know that I have their back. And if you're walking into the banking environment every day and you have somebody who is an adversary when you're supposed to be a colleague, then I can't imagine the kind of stress and hell you went through. And one thing I can appreciate about your story is that you focus so much on the mental health aspect, man. And in the African-American community, there are 2 things that I think we struggle with quite a bit. And one of them is mental health and one is money. They're just like taboo subjects. So why don't you just, talk to us a little bit about that, man? Like, why do you focus so much on the mental aspect?
Well, I mean, I think, like you said, money and mental health is like, that's the epitome of the intersection of the work that I do, right? Financial empowerment. That's to say, yeah, maybe I don't know the basics of financial literacy. Cool, I cover that. But maybe I do know the basic financial literacy, but I don't feel like I deserve, right, to live that life. Yep. I've heard so many people say, oh man, that's white people stuff when it comes to investing, when it comes to building credit, when it comes to building wealth. And it's like, no, like, that's not white people stuff. Like, that's for you, that's for me, like, that's for all of us. But because it's so foreign to us in our communities and access to the education is restricted, it's not conversations that we have at dinner tables and, holiday gatherings and stuff, that it's just like, it's an alienated kind of topic. So I studied psychology when I was in school, definitely a student of the human mind. And I'm somebody who's been empowered their whole life. It's just what I was fed from the time I was a baby. For me, existing in that space was difficult because I had to code switch and, have the double identity, right? Show up and be twice as good to be just as good and, do the network thing and smile and laugh at the jokes that I didn't find funny and, all of that. And I just got tired of it. I got tired and I started to feel myself not like myself. I started to feel myself be angry and be anxious, and like there was a metallic taste in like what my interactions felt like, where it's like I see somebody's name come up on my phone or come up in my email and or my instant message, and I'm like, oh.
Wow.
But then I pick up the phone and I got a smile and I'm like, hey, how's everything going? Like, oh, becoming other than Rahkim was not something that I was willing. It wasn't something I was willing to sacrifice. But I had to figure out, how do I escape, right? I have a mortgage, I have financial obligations, so I can't just leave carelessly, or at least I didn't think that I could, right?
Yeah.
And
That's funny.
and then one day I realized I could, and I realized that I could because of the combination of where my mental, or like self-awareness was, where my mental was, and being empowered to say I deserve more, but also in the application and the discipline associated with saving, investing, and understanding how to use these different systems and products, so that I could feel comfortable making that decision if I didn't immediately replace my income, or entrepreneurship wasn't successful, or I couldn't find another job that I wanted to work at. So it was a culmination of all those things, and it's really helped me to kind of double down on this mission, because that's been the mission from education and empowerment. But now that I have some like skin in the game based off of experiences that I've had, and really kind of taking the lessons that I share with people, and like having to, eat my own medicine, so to speak, I get to say, hey, look, I know what it's like to be scared. I know what it's like to question and to wonder. I know what it's like to have to. I'm gonna hold your hand through this process.
Absolutely, man. That's some great information. And I have been introduced to the fire community in the past few years, and my why for FI basically is to be able to do what I want when I want, and travel the world with my family as we get a little older. And I think the most important part of the fire or the FI movement basically is the fact that you provide yourself with choices. And I love my job. I love what I do. I love education. It's something. Career day in 1987, when I was in second grade, I said I want to be a school principal, and it's something that I set out to do, and I became one. And I enjoy what I do. So me trying to, work towards a retirement in 2033 isn't me just trying to get away from education. It's just, hey, I work hard for this, and I'm gonna exercise my options. I think we need to provide ourselves with those kind of options, and what you have done is to do that. Now, I think that it's important for people to understand the steps that you take and others take in the fire movement in order to position yourselves to walk away if you choose. What kind of steps did you take besides just, knowing, hey, I need to save a particular amount of money each month? What other steps did you take?
Yeah, so I don't know that I would necessarily consider myself to be a part of the fire movement. I'm very aware of the fire movement, but I didn't subscribe to any of the blogs and the communities or what have you. I just did the most thick and consistent behavior I think that there is, and that was pay myself first.
Absolutely.
It was taking a portion of my income every time I got paid and putting it away. And I was very aggressive about investing. I am very aggressive about investing. And so as my income increased, I increased what I put away. And it's just kind of like the combination of things so I bought a multifamily in 2016. I was 26 years old.
Okay.
I had tenants. My mom was one of my tenants. And so what I was getting in rental income offset the cost of my mortgage. So what the difference was, I was able to invest. At one point in time, I was putting $500 a month, or I think it was either $500 a month or $1,000 a month. Maybe every time I got paid like $500, I was putting into my investment. Time I had extra money, bonuses, raises, anything, I would just invest it. And I was a guest on Bigger Pockets Money podcast, and they asked me about an emergency fund.
Uh-huh.
It's like, I don't believe in them. And they're like, what? And like, that's like that's blasphemy, right? In the financial communities. But I said, first of all, let's look at the phrasing here, right? The emergency fund. I'm planning and preparing for an emergency, right?
Mhm.
So I'm expecting, I'm calling this emergency to my doorstep. I don't like that term. Beyond that, like my money's not growing significantly sitting in a bank account, right? At 0.03%. And maybe 0.06%, maybe,
or worse now, lower
you know
now.
what I'm saying? So like,
Yeah.
so I knew that investing was the fastest way to grow my money. Certainly there's risks involved, and you have to do your due diligence and make smart financial decisions when it comes to doing that. But I found it was Apple, and I just invested a lot in Apple. So I wasn't all over the place. I wasn't trying to get complicated. I certainly did like lose money trying to chase like, whatever advice, stock picks that people were giving, but there was an aspect to consistency and discipline that really positioned me well. And like that was the formula: pay yourself first and invest aggressively. When I left my job, I won't say that I had a regret when it comes to not having a quote unquote emergency fund. But now my money's tied up in investments. So it's like, if quote unquote an emergency were to occur, then I'm gonna have to liquidate, or I'm gonna have to find a way to get some money. And so that's been kind of like the dilemma in the last 6 months. Do I sell, or do I go out there, bust my ass, and figure out how to make some money so that I don't have to?
Yeah.
And I'm very proud to say that in the 6 months that I've not been working for corporate America, I haven't sold anything. I've been out there, I've been making money. I as a big part of the picture, and I think that's an aspect of financial education that is not talked about enough. I have massive credit lines. So I was just like, hey, I'm gonna take advantage of these 0% balance transfer offers and use some of that to help cover my expenses. So it was a combination of things. But ultimately it's just like, for me, common sense. But and I think, and I don't want to make that statement and be insensitive to people that don't know or don't understand, but that's why financial education is so important. And more than the financial education, but the empowerment piece to say, hey, I'm willing to take a bet on myself.
Yes, sir. Man, that's some good information. What other kind of things do you invest in? Do you invest in index funds or mostly, single stocks?
I do invest in index funds. I'm not a financial advisor, so let me just throw out the disclaimer here that this is all like educational.
Yeah.
It's not advice. Don't do what I'm telling you to do. I'm not telling you to do anything.
Yeah.
But it depends on the vehicle that I'm investing in, and what is my like personal consumer confidence in whatever this thing is that I'm investing in. But outside of the stock market, I'm invested in silver, like physical silver. I'm invested in cryptocurrency. Of course, I shared I'm invested in real estate. So I am pretty diversified when it comes to like what assets look like. But the biggest piece of me is definitely the stock market.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, somebody hears your story and they are struggling with their job, and it's just a situation where they don't feel respected. It might be a little bit of, systemic racism at their job, and they want to get out. What advice would you give that individual?
Yeah, have a plan. Definitely have a plan. I think that was the biggest part of this for me too. I want to lead this quote unquote movement. I didn't know about the Great Resignation before I quit. And then when I did quit, it was referred to as a rage quit, right? And there are people rage quitting, and I was like, man, I've never heard that term before. That's not what it was. I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur like years ago. So I for it. Everybody's not planning to be an entrepreneur. So their quitting is now leaving them in like this free fall that says, if I have savings, I'm going to use it until I find a new job.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to try entrepreneurship out, but now I have to go through the growing pains of figuring out, like wrapping my mind around entrepreneurship, or I don't do anything, right?
Yeah.
And of course, you have a family, or if you have financial obligations like a mortgage or a car note. So I would say have a plan, like something a little bit more solid than just I'm quitting and I have money set aside. Have some timelines for when you want to see different kinds of results. Have a plan around what health insurance look like. So that was a big gap for me. I didn't think about what are the implications of this leaving my job on health insurance, and what happens if, like, we're in the middle of a pandemic, I need to be hospitalized.
Yeah.
What else? What are your financial goals coming out of that, right? So like I own property, go buy a house, but somebody quitting at the same timeline that I did and then deciding they want to buy a house, it's like, well, now you have to account for however long you were out of work. In my case, it's 6 months.
Yeah.
You have to account for why you weren't getting an income for the last 6 months. Or the same thing with a car. So figuring out, like, is the timing right?
Yeah.
And what else? Not just doing it on a whim. I think the misconception for the people who are very pro 2 weeks notice, very pro, like, you shouldn't have gone out the way that you did and burnt the bridge that you did, was that they thought I was just kind of like giving corporate my ass to kiss and like whatever, right?
Yeah.
I was very like, I was respectful. I was professional. I never named the company that I worked for in any of the opportunities that I had to do so. Certainly it's not difficult to go find what company it was that I worked for, but I knew that, like, I wanted to go out with class.
Yeah.
And so, the people that got caught up in their feelings based off of how I left is the people that got caught up in their feelings of how I left.
Yeah.
So I think those are really big pieces of advice. Like, tap into your network, understand like what the potential looks like for you in terms of career pivots if you're trying to pivot. Understand what entrepreneurship looks like for you. Understand where your money situation is right now and what it could look like 6 months from now. Just have a plan. Think about those unknowns. The biggest pain point for me as an entrepreneur, as a new full-time entrepreneur, is that there's so much glamorizing of what entrepreneurship looks like that you miss the gritty parts of it. Like,
Yeah.
you don't know until you have to go through it. And I was just like, man, what I'm missing right now is like a support group to help me at life. Like, I think some people get involved in entrepreneurship because it's sexy, it's cool. It's like, oh yeah, I get to be my own boss. But I can't tell you the number of times that I have thought about the need to have to go apply for a job and like how much that pains me, and saying like, damn, like, I made a whole brand off of firing my boss, right?
Yeah.
That I applied to is gonna Google me and see this Tamron Hall Business Insider, and they're gonna be like, so what's this about? And I'm gonna have to come up with an explanation. Like, I can never go back.
Wow.
I could, but
Yeah.
I can't. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll have to like eat my words, and so I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But that speaks to like my personal empowerment, my confidence, and my ability to perform and deliver for me. Everybody doesn't have that.
Wow. Hey, that's incredible, man. And I think that your story will resonate with people that have not heard it. And obviously it has resonated with people who have heard it. So, I mean, you have an amazing story. I salute you for everything you've done. So anybody that sees this video, how can people follow you? Where can they find you?
My name, everything is at my name. So my name is Rahkim Sabree. It's RAHKIM SABREE. And I've made it my brand. So type it into Google, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, wherever. Rahkim Sabree is going to YouTube. There's going to be something of mine that pops up. And my DMs are always open. I like to share this information. I don't always share it for free, but you know, it's there, right? It's something that is relatable that can help people, and so that's what I want to do. That's who I am.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate it once again, man. You know, dedicating your time to me. You know, I'm forever grateful for that. So I really appreciate you and keep doing the great work. I'm proud of you, and I salute you once again, man.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. I appreciate it, man. Have a good one. All right.
Yes, sir. You too.
Yes, sir.